Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Purposeful Wisdom Podcast. My name is Dawn Christine. Thank you guys so much for being here today. If you're new, welcome in. If you're returning, welcome back. Guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Let's spread the message. You know, I'm all about healing and growth with this channel, and getting our message out is my main priority here, to help people heal, to help people find tools that will work. There's a bunch of videos on this platform, so see what resonates with you, watch the video, share with others. That is the entire point of this podcast. I love you guys so much for being here. Thank you. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest on today's show. I have Mr. Glen Williams with me. Glen is a distinguished author, renowned for his work in fostering effective communication and relationships in the aftermath of traumatic events. With a commendable career spanning 26 years in law enforcement, Glen served as a dedicated patrol officer, detective, and trainer at the Sandy City Police and Utah Transit Authority Police. In his post-retirement phase, Glen continues to make a meaningful impact. He travels extensively, collaborating with police departments throughout the United States to present and speak about his book, Bridging the Gap: Survival Tactics for Law Enforcement Relationships. This initiative aims to reduce the prevalence of PTSD, divorce, and suicide within the law enforcement community. As a testament to his dedication, Glen also serves as a part-time instructor at Dixie State University Satellite Peace Officer Standards and Training Academy. Currently residing in Springville, Utah with his wife, Deborah, Glen finds his greatest joy in effecting positive change throughout public speaking, teaching, and writing. Glen, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your service.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I just want to dive right in. Guys, just so you guys know, Glen and I have been speaking for about a half an hour off camera, and I'm like, the stuff we're getting into is just so good. We just need to start recording. I made a friend for life. That's all I can say. Like, seriously. Glen, I would love for you to start from the beginning of what brought you to this phase in your life, and why you have made it your mission to help fellow officers and military in their environments and their families.
Well, I did a lot of things that didn't work back in the day. And I went through a lot of issues. Like every police officer, we see traumatic things several times a week, sometimes several times a day, depending on the day, and things that affect us. And when I first started, we were taught, you don't talk about this stuff. You just don't talk, you suck it up. And that's what we did. PTSD in just about every officer that I know of some type. And it created issues in a lot of them at home. In fact, the divorce rate in law enforcement is extremely high. When I went to the academy, they brought our spouses in and said, you know, the divorce rate is extremely high, but you're going to see things you aren't going to want to talk about. You're going to see things you can't because it's an ongoing investigation, but keep communication open with your spouse so you don't get divorced. And we all walked out at the end of 4 hours going, and how do we do that?
Right.
And in my case, I didn't do it very well, and I ended up divorced after 19 years of marriage. And I had been an officer for about, I think, 12 years at that time. And those are things that, whether you want it or not, just eat you alive. Divorce is a traumatic event. And it's a traumatic event not only for you, but it's also a traumatic event for your family. And those are things that I did not really get back then. And I tried it again. I'm a slow learner. You know, some of the things I saw, I include the things in my book that a lot of them that created PTSD for me or issues, and how I didn't deal with things back then and how I would do it differently now. And that's my message, is we get to heal, but the change starts with each and every one of us, where we become self-accountable. Without that, you cannot change. And so that's kind of the story of my journey, or a brief story. You know, a couple of things, like I'll share an incident with you. One of the ones that just tears me up. Even to this day, or one day got a call of a missing child. And children are always the worst ones. 3-year-old kid, they called him Little Houdini because he could escape from anything. His parents had actually even put an extra lock on the door and he still got out and we couldn't find him. As we pulled into the apartment complex, there was a fountain with a pond, kind of a little pond there, and it was overflowing with soap suds and bubbles. Teenagers had dumped boxes of soap in there the night before. Couldn't see it, the fountain, couldn't see the water, couldn't see anything. And as we pulled in and we went to the place, the first thing we do is search the house because 80% of the kids are usually found somewhere hiding in the house.
Right.
So we searched and we couldn't find, and I had a couple of other officers join me, and we asked the regular questions. Okay, who are his friends? Where does he like to go? Where's his favorite park? What does he like to, and we started searching the whole area, and after about 45 minutes, we still had not found the young man. And now we're getting really worried. So we gathered in the parking lot by that fountain, and we're discussing the next step in the search, and a little breeze came up and just parted some of the soap suds, and one of the officers or somebody, I don't remember who, was able to see a shoe in the water, and the young man had climbed in, probably searching through the bubbles, and ended up in the water. And we pulled him out, and I did CPR on him. And they transported him up to the Children's Hospital, but were not able to save him or bring him back. And even though I know if you're doing CPR, they're already gone, it's a miracle if you bring them back, it still hurts.
Oh my God.
So I was an officer about 17, 18 years at that time. And I had a really good leader that day, because I've had some good ones and I've had some bad ones. And this one came up to me and says, "Are you okay, brother?" And for the first time in my career, 18 years, I admitted I was not. And I looked at him and I said, "No, I'm not." And he says, "Don't worry about your report. Go take care of yourself. And when you're done, come on in the office and we'll get the rest taken care of." So I found a church parking lot a few blocks away, and I backed up against a brick wall, and I sat there and bawled my eyes out.
Oh my gosh, Glenn.
So
I can't even imagine, I'm a mom, and I can't even imagine if God forbid something horrific happened to one of my children. Even thinking about it, like it just, like I feel that, and this world, the way this world is today, there are things I've heard and read about that are just unimaginable things. And I can't even imagine the things that you guys go through every single day of your careers. And it's not, you guys are not, I will just say it because this is my channel and I get to speak my mind. You police officers and military are not respected the way they should be. And I'm not saying that there aren't rotten apples in the bunch. I'll put it that way. But 99% of officers in military are good people. They sacrifice their lives, the lives of their families, to protect us every single day. And we take that for granted. We do. A lot of us do. And they don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You guys go through this every single day and see traumatic things, and no one takes care of our officers or our military. I'm sorry, they just don't. And that needs, I really feel if there was any kind of movement that I could start, it would be for police and military, along with kids, educating children mentally, emotionally, physically. Like, we all deserve that. They can't just expect people that put their lives on the lines every single day to just go out there and tough it up and not show emotion and not feel the things that you are experiencing. And to me, that never made sense to me. I think being raw and authentic and in touch with your feelings, whatever line of work you are in, you have the right to feel the things you feel. And for someone on the outside to come in and say, "Suck it up, you don't need to feel what you're feeling," or just shove it down, like, do they even realize what that does to a human being? especially seeing it over and over and over again, the way you guys encounter this stuff.
Yeah, we talked earlier, and I know there's some stats that I read, and I may have the numbers a little wrong, but they're pretty close to what I read because it's been a year or so. The average normal citizen experiences 3 to 4, maybe 5 major traumatic events in their life. Your average police officer experiences 80 to 100 in 20-year career. And that's not the guys that are on all the major task forces and chasing serial killers and stuff. That's just your everyday officer that we see stuff that rips us up. And we've been trained as from my generation, from a young man, don't talk about stuff.
Right.
And even when I was a new officer, we didn't talk about stuff because if you did and you said you needed some help, they'd find you unfit for duty and fire you. And, I'm grateful that things are starting to shift. I'm going to be in a conference next week in Las Vegas on police trauma. And it's the 3rd conference for this group. And so I know there are people out there now that are starting to spread that word of officer wellness. And that's my message for officers is talk about stuff, get it out there, because if we don't, it will eat us alive. I know I started having nightmares, and probably 3, 4, 5 times a month. And I would wake up just screaming at night. And, now I've worked through a lot of stuff over the last few years. I retired about 7 years ago, although I still work part-time here and there. But the difference I see now, in fact, I teach this in my class. I start with journaling.
Yes.
Because as you journal, psychologists and psychiatrists use this all the time. It allows your mind to let it out. It lets the mind know it's okay to share it. But I've got it on paper, so I don't have to share it with anybody else if I don't want to. But as I put it out there and I write it, the more I put it out, whether it be on paper or whatever, the easier it becomes. And it's a healing. I'll be honest, that was not the intent, but that's kind of what led to my book, was sharing my experiences. And now I'm not afraid to talk about them. In fact, I'm very open about them. That doesn't mean they don't still affect me.
Of course.
But we get to work through those things slowly but surely. And there's really no cure. There's just ways to work through it.
Right. Oh my gosh. No, and I absolutely love that you did this and that you're educating other officers out there that desperately need this, because I could only imagine how alone they feel, and I want to ask you this. Have you found throughout your career that officers confide in other officers? Do officers talk to each other about this stuff, even share about this stuff of what they're going through mentally, emotionally? Or is it taboo still, where if you show emotion, or if you let another brother know that this is bothering you, is it seen as a sign of weakness still? Or are there more officers talking about these things to release and cope and share?
In the last 5 years, yes, more are sharing. And part of it's the newer, younger generation coming in because they're not afraid to say, hey, something's bothering me. When I started back in 1990, no, we didn't share anything. And we just swallowed it up. In fact, I went to a sergeant with a problem. I was having struggles in my first marriage. And he says, well, why didn't you quit and go take care of it? And I kind of looked at him thinking, if I quit my job, I have a financial problem, which then lends to marriage problems, which that's not a solution.
Dare him.
And I didn't dare. I mean, I was already working 3 jobs just to survive. And he wants me to
That's another
quit.
thing. They don't pay you guys enough too. Like they don't. They really don't. Teachers and police officers, and there's a bunch of other ones I can't think off the top of my head, but like this is our future. And there's not enough investment into your mental and emotional and physical well-being. Yeah, you go to the academy, you train your body. Do they train? They program your mind to be this tough for, and I'm not saying that you don't have to be that to an extent. It takes a special kind of person to be in military and police, hands down. It does. It's not for everyone. But where is the help? Where are the programs to support fellow officers in times of need? Like, why aren't you guys getting free mental health services on a bi-weekly basis or even a weekly basis to talk about these things, to share these things, to find things to cope and release so that the rest of your world remains as normal as possible? And I use air quotes when I mean normal.
Yeah. What's your definition of normal? Yes.
Right.
Thankfully, it is starting to shift that way. I know I was talking with somebody the other day, and they're a relative of theirs works for federal law enforcement, and they actually have mandatory meetings with a psychologist every 3 months, and which I think is great.
Yes.
The problem is how many psychologists really understand the job, and if you don't understand the job and it's evident, officers have a very hard time trusting.
Right.
I have a lot of friends that have retired that have gone on to become psychologists. I can name 3 or 4 off the top of my head.
Wow.
And so when they come in, that's why it's okay for me to go talk about this stuff, because I've experienced, and that's one of the comments in my classes that I've gotten is I love the fact that he has been there.
Right.
And so I have that trust. I just don't have the PhD or the doctor behind my name. And at my stage of life, that's not happening. But, I get to be real.
No, you know what? Here's the thing, I get, title is great. If you have a PhD or a doctor, you worked hard for those degrees. You worked hard to get where you are. I am not dismissing that at all. But everyday people also have a lot to teach as well, because we see things and we experience things from different angles. And if we can help inspire others, especially that we're here to serve, just because we have a title to the end of our name doesn't mean that we as everyday people can't inspire others. You're inspiring people in your way and reaching out and helping fellow officers not go down the same road that you initially went down. You're helping these men and women save their marriages, save their family structures, talk about things that are traumatic to them. And that's the first step, because the ratio of people that are actually experiencing these things to therapists, there's not enough therapists, especially that specialize in the things that you guys witnesses. So sharing with each other and finding a way to converse these things and talk about these things, I think you're doing great. Like, that's amazing.
Well, and what really spurs me on is what I call the ripple effect. Because if we can fix our relationships at home, that ripples out to our work, which ripples out to our communities, and then all this
Right.
crap goes away.
Right.
All this stuff that's been happening in the world lately. I just, peace and quiet and calm. That's what I love.
Absolutely. Especially when your world is chaotic all the time. So I'd love to ask you, Glenn, what can we do as friends, family, spouses of law enforcement and or military? How can we best support our loved ones when they're out in the field every day, risking their lives, witnessing all this horrible, traumatic things that happen out there that we have no clue about, really? What can we do to best support our loved ones through this?
That is a tough one because you can't push.
Right.
We can't push because officers will become resistant. They'll, nope, and then they'll just shut down.
Right.
There's some things, what you have to do is give them time and be patient. And I know when I was starting to display signs of PTSD, I would come home and something would happen and I would snap. and in anger, and I would yell or I would get really loud. And then I'd back down and go, oh, what did I just do? Because it took a moment for everything to catch up with
Right.
that outburst. Be patient, because that is a sign that they've got something going on inside that they're not dealing with and can't, and maybe even can't deal with. I mean, I've had enough things happen that, and I'm nothing special. I'm just an everyday cop. That's all I was. I was never on any of this fancy task force or anything. But every officer every day sees these things, and be patient with them. Um, I hate to say, no, I don't hate to say, pray for them, because
Yes.
um, sometimes you can't break through until they are ready to. And that's where they have to become self-accountable before they're ready to break through. I lived in my cabin by myself for 3 years when I was going through my change. And I lived up there, and I got comfortable with me, and I got back in touch with who I really am. And that was the start of the shift that allowed me to open up. I went through some other self-enhancement trainings and things to deal with stuff, but just get totally back in touch with who I am, because I had forgotten. I let the job become my life. And that's another thing as a family, keep them occupied outside of work. If you see
Right.
them withdrawing from their friends, withdrawing from their activities, withdrawing from things, that's a huge sign that something is not right. And so, I had hobbies outside of work, but then like an idiot, I brought them into work. I've taught scuba diving for many, many years, and then I started teaching forensic and law enforcement diving, and then I sucked it back into work. And
Right.
even though going out on these awesome dives or in the Caribbean and things was calming, I forgot. I forgot.
Right.
I let it
So
become.
keynote is not to blend the two worlds, so to speak. Keep your hobby separate from law enforcement, any kind of law enforcement, everyday activities, and just to keep you grounded.
Yes, have your family and outside activities to keep you grounded. Because what's the most important thing to everybody I've ever talked to is their family.
Right.
And I have to tell them they're full of it. Because if that's true, why is the divorce rate so high? And it's because we get lost in the job.
Right.
And so if so all they do is hang out with other cops, don't do that. Don't do
And
that.
I know a lot of police officers that's what it is. Cops hang out with other cops, just like firefighters hang out with firefighters, and military hangs out. Like it's your these are your brothers and sisters. I totally get that. But again, I think it's because of an old belief system.
Yeah.
And we're passing that on from generation to generation, where you need to learn, just like with everyday people, you need to separate your work life from your family life if you can, because you don't want to blend. And I'm not saying not to have friends from work, but there has to be some sort of separation where you're able to balance and defer one reality from another, so to speak.
Well, and make sure to be able to set boundaries. I know I would go to group parties and things, and the first thing, so what happened at work? I want to hear what's going on.
Right.
And for me, I never set the boundary. I just go talk about it because it brought back that adrenaline for me. But that's part of PTSD. And so what I do is, not right now is not the time to talk about it. I'll be happy to talk to you about it another time. And you can still maintain that, but then have your social that's not revolving around your job. And
I
so
agree
for
with
the guys
that.
and gals, you've got to be able to set those boundaries and make sure when you're somewhere. This is something I've learned, is being in the moment. In the moment, I'm not.
Yes,
I'm here. I'm conversing. Let's be in this moment right here, right now. Because what happened earlier today or last night doesn't matter.
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I really work hard at being in that moment. It's, not a great example because I'm sitting here at work, but I'm in a room with the door shut and I get us pay attention here to what's
Right.
happening. Because nothing in the future matters except what I do right now, how it affects what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with more with that. I'd love for you, I know you brought a copy of your book today, and I'd love for you to talk about it, just share about it. I guys, like, especially if you're in law enforcement or know someone that's in law enforcement, get Glen's book. I mean, he's on a mission to help fellow officers. Glen, please share what you have.
Okay, well, that's my book. It's called Bridging the Gap. And I titled it such because we create gaps in our lives. And when we set work, it becomes our life, we create huge gaps with our families. And so I've learned it took me a long time and I did a lot of things that didn't work, but I learned. And I want to help everybody bridge those gaps in their lives that could lead to the issues that I went through. Because if I can help you not do the same stupid shit that I did, man, we both win. We all win. Um, Basically, I go through my career and I came up with three types of trauma. And now I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, but I have experiential trauma. That's the daily things that we see that affect us. And then I have relationship trauma because I've been in a relationship that did create a lot of trauma, and I can't say that I didn't create some back. It's a two-way street. It's a
Right.
relationship, but there were some things that happened that were crazy. And then leadership trauma, because I've had some good leaders and bad managers, and some of the, like I mentioned earlier, the one that says, well, then quit and go take care of your family. Well, if I quit, how can I take care of my family financially? I can't,
Exactly.
so it made no sense. But that was the response. What I learned I'm a slow learner. I tried it twice. And I took me after the second one before I finally figured a few things out, and starting with self accountability. I took a hard look at me. And then I was able to, when I looked at me, realize, okay, I've got some issues. And when I started working through those issues, then I was able to open up even broader. And then I got thinking, looking back on the PTSD, and I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? And I went to therapy. So I started there. Then I discovered some outside the box ways to deal with things. Guess what? There's some awesome things. EMDR, which is
Yes.
eye movement desensitization, and I can't remember what
Yep.
the R stands for.
I've had that too. Yep.
I tried that when it was experimental, or I did that when I was experimental. I didn't try it, I did it. And wow, what
Yeah.
a difference maker. It changed the way I looked at things completely. But there are other things outside the box. For example, if anybody heard of Tibetan bowls or singing bowls?
Yeah. Sound healing. Yep.
Yeah, sound healing is what it's called now. Back then it was called, there wasn't, I don't know, but I had a gal that did it with me, and man, it was awesome. In fact,
Yep.
that's still my favorite thing. I go do several times a year.
Oh yeah.
Um, Things like that just to settle and calm. Or then, I mean, believe it or not, out of that came drum circles. Now, when I was
Yes.
a cop, a drum circle was a bunch of hippies smoking dope around a fire. And they actually have shaman-led drum circles for healing.
Yes.
And if you get the right people, it's amazing. And there are just so many things that people considered that I would have never looked at 20 years ago. I would have gone, no way. But now I've tried things, and I'm amazed that you don't have to go get medicated. You don't have to.
Yes.
It just, but it all starts with open, honest look at yourself and open, honest communication. That's where it all starts.
Absolutely. And
And
an open mind too, because, the way I look at things is, if you think that a pill is going to solve your problems, it's not. It's like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound, because you have to get to the root of the issue. And I've always said, and I've said this for myself, and it took me a long time to convince myself this, that we are not our traumas. these things that happen to us are not what makes us us. We handled it the best way we knew how to in the moment that it was happening. A lot of times people don't handle it the right way. We turn to drugs, we turn to alcohol, we turn to bad behaviors because we don't know how to deal with these things. And having an open mind, and first and foremost, believing in something that is bigger and higher than any of us, which I call God. I also call it higher power. I also, like, I believe in everything and anything. I call my religion a beautiful blend of awesomeness. I've said it before, because I do incorporate Christianity. I incorporate Buddhism. I heal with crystals. I do sound healing. I do energy healing. I mean, you name it, I do it. I journal. I've done EMDR. I've done all of it. And it all works.
Yep.
So it's what works best for each and every person. But I think being open-minded and bringing in holistic ways to heal is key too, because we have to calm down the parasympathetic system, which is our fight, flight, freeze. And when we can get our minds quiet, we're able to focus on the things that we need to do in order to change us, because the world is not going to change. We have to change ourselves.
I love it. We all build this tiny little box around us to protect us, quote unquote. And in reality, it's holding us in.
Yes.
And law enforcement, especially, or any public safety jobs, you've got policies, procedures, laws, all these things. And then we have our expectations.
Right.
That's the biggest problem, is this is what we expect. And this is what's expected of us. Well, if you think outside the box and do it outside the box, you get condemned. Yep. In many cases. And we've got to get rid of that box, be more open-minded, and look at alternatives, because there are hundreds and hundreds of alternatives out there for everything that we do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And yes, you know, I know there's people out there that also need the help of medication. I'm not discarding it at all, but you have to get to the root of the issue. Along, if medication is for you and you decide to go that route in with a lot of other healing modalities, great, whatever works for you. But unless you get to the root, the problem's not going to resolve on its own. And taking a pill and thinking, oh, it's just going to make everything better.
It's not what's happening. Yeah.
It's not. And I can speak of this because I knew, like, there was a time in my life that a person convinced me I was a title. I will put it that way. And before I knew it, I was on 8 different medicines a day. And I didn't even I was experiencing trauma and PTSD. And I was told I was this, and I believed this person that I was this. And they convinced me, oh, well, in order to save the rest of your relationships, you need to get on medication because something's wrong with you. And before I knew it, I was on one pill, and then I was on another pill, and then I was on this pill to counteract this pill. And then I couldn't sleep at night. And then I was on this. And before I knew it, I was taking 8 medicines a day until I was like, enough. I'm done with this. Like, I have to take control of my life. And I literally wipe the slate clean. Like, no more, I'm doing this holistically. I'm going to do this. And I chose to go a different route with my healing journey. And it was all holistic. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life, because I'm clear-headed. I don't have, for me personally, I don't have medications fogging my memory, where I have these ups and downs and highs and lows from the effects of the medicine. I couldn't even think straight half the time. I felt like a zombie on them. And I didn't even need them to begin with. You know, so like, and that's why, like, I strongly suggest to people watching to think outside the box, to be optimistic and explore different ways that you can heal, and you can create your own healing plan. It could involve medicine. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it involves Tibetan singing bowls. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it involves meditation or sound healing, or bringing on a psychologist and a coach and all these other different things. And before you know it, not only are you in charge of your life and your healing journey, you also built your custom healing team.
And it's not easy, but it's
No.
very doable. What started for me was getting back in touch with physical exercise and nature.
Yes.
Because when I went up to my cabin, I was a good guy. I started drinking every night. I drove 57 miles to work. I'd leave it, get up at 3:30 in the morning, go to work. I'd get back about 7 at night, and I'd go in the house, make dinner, and I'd have a drink. I was a good guy. I only kept it to 2 drinks a night, but they were 32 ounces each. Yeah, so I was not feeling any pain and I was numb and I wasn't having nightmares, but it wasn't because I had dealt with the problem. And after a few months of that, I realized I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I said, man, the only life you're screwing up is yours. And that's when I really woke up, and I'm living up in the cabin in the mountains with aspens and pines around me. And I'm watching the deer walk by and a moose in my driveway, and
Oh,
I'm missing it all. And so that was one of the things that started my awakening a little bit. And then worked into physical exercise instead of going home and drinking. I stopped at the gym on the way home. I was 15 miles from town because I knew once I got home, I wasn't going back down the mountain. But
right.
yeah, so I changed what I was doing. And then I started some counseling and therapy. And then I worked into some other things that opened me up even more. And then I found the bowls and the things that really, now meditation is huge. I laugh when I go to a class. I'll ask, how many of you meditate? And nobody will raise their hand. Because when you say meditation, everybody thinks of the orange robes, kumbaya, and all that stuff.
Of course.
And so nobody. And I said, well, BS. I said, how many of you are on SWAT? And some guys will raise their hand. I said, when you're getting ready to go on a stressful situation, what do? Oh, we combat breathe. Oh, you meditate.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they were doing it, but didn't even realize they were doing it, and didn't realize how they can apply it to other parts of their life.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just amazing how simple things can be, and yet how effective they can be. And I meditate,
Absolutely.
a couple times a week. Another form of meditation for me is getting a massage. If you
Yes.
go with the proper mindset and you just let everything go, that's an awesome way. And in fact, I do that like almost once a week now.
Saunas for me.
So,
I
oh
love sauna.
yeah,
I love sauna therapy because not only is it released, because we still hold traumas in our bodies. Even the slightest thing, if we're feeling stressed, we hold that trauma in our bodies and then we feel it physically. So for me, it's massage and then sauna. And I have a place
yeah.
that I go to where it's a 2-in-1. And just to release the toxins from your body and drink lots of
It's
water, flush everything out. But seriously, like, I mean, in these things, this is all part of self-care and self-love. And we have to fall in love with ourselves first and be whole with ourselves in order for any other type of relationship to work in our lives, especially when we come from traumatic backgrounds or have witnessed things that are traumatic. And it really is up to us whether or not we choose to live the way things have always been or make a choice to change ourselves to see the light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the day.
if we aren't okay, we cannot take care of others.
That's right.
And I learned this in the police department, when you have to run code to an emergency or lights and siren to an emergency. One of the things we're taught is you've got to be very, very careful, because if you don't get there safely, if you crash on the way, all you've done is created another emergency. So now we have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our families and our friends and the people around us. And that is, but we're taught not to look at ourselves.
Right.
It's called not being humble,
It's called
and
selfish.
that's what we're taught.
Right. We're supposed to take care of everybody else. And if we look at ourselves, it's being selfish and self-centered. You can't give from an empty cup. You
Yeah,
just can't.
exactly.
I tried it. It doesn't
Interesting
work.
dichotomy. Yeah, interesting dichotomy. And there's so many of them of the way we're raised and
Ugh.
taught that in reality are total garbage.
That's one reason why I became a belief systems coach, because when I had to look back on my own life and realize the things that I was taught and the belief systems that I was brought up in, and I was like, something's wrong with this picture. This doesn't seem right. And that's why I coach the people I coach, and I teach them about belief systems and changing their habits and changing their mindset, because it does. It starts from childhood too, because it's generational. Their beliefs were their parents' beliefs, and that old way of thinking. I heard something on the other day, which I found really quite comical and quite like, oh, it made me stop and think. You know how the saying is, oh, you have to see the world as either the glass being half empty or half full, and that's the type of people. I saw this quote, I don't remember where it was, but it was like, I don't see the glass as like half empty or half full. I just have a pitcher. So I get to fill that pitcher up anytime I want. And it was like a way of like, like even thinking more outside the box. Instead of
Yeah.
seeing the world as black and white, I get to have a picture and I get to fill it up how I see fit and how I view the world. And taking that perspective, just looking at life in another way, if people that expect for things to change when they keep doing, it's what the definition of insanity. If you expect things to change and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, I mean, I'm guilty of this, and this is why I can speak freely of it now, and share with others my humility, because I'm like, I know it doesn't work. You have like, it starts with you. It starts changing you, and recognize it, and having the courage to be honest with yourself and say, all right, I had a part in this too. And if I want things to change, I got to change me first.
Bingo. Oh,
Oh,
thank you. Yes.
no, thank you. And seriously, I am so humbled and honored that you took time out of your day today to speak with me and my audience. And I am going to put all your information in the description box, because I really want to spread this message to fellow police officers and their families out there, and military, and get the message out. Where will you be? You said you're going to Nevada next for a conference.
Yes, I will be in Nevada, Las Vegas next week, actually. Yeah.
Where at, so that people could know?
I'm actually not presenting, but I have a table where I'll be talking to people and selling my book at the Ahern Hotel. It's called The Wounded Blue. Um, yeah, and
I love that. No, like I felt,
some great guys. And that was 3 years ago. I went to their very first conference, and that was the first time in my life that I actually found people working to do the same thing I'm doing.
oh,
And
so now you guys are building community too. I love that.
yes, yes. And then I went to their second conference last year in Indiana, and now it's back in Vegas this year. And a great group of people. I mean, they have 24-hour counseling service and things like that, for officers specifically. But the things that are taught aren't just for officers; they're for everybody, because
Right.
everybody has trauma in their life. I learned this during COVID, and it was horrible. Um, but the principles are all the same, and so we simply have to transfer them. It's like I was teaching at one group, and there was a mixed firefighter law enforcement group, and the firefighters complained because I didn't share any fire stories. And I laughed at it. I said, well, if you want me to lie and make stuff up, I can do that. I have friends that are firefighters. I'll steal their stories. But this is what I experience, and that's what I get to address, not
Right.
stuff up. And they got it, but they were kind of more razzing me with that little friendly rivalry.
That'll always be, I mean, and I know this too. There's always gonna be, it's, you guys bust each other's chops, as I like to
Yep.
say. It's the bro code. It's like what's better, who's better. But at the end of the day, you all witness trauma, just in different forms. They
Yeah.
witness it. and 90% of the times you all collaborate on something anyways. If there is a fire, then there's police officers on the scene, and vice versa. If, there's a hostage situation and something catches fire, they come to you. So work together, people. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Work together.
But
Okay, there's a time and place, but work together, because the mission is the same regardless.
yes,
It's for everyone to get the help and the teachings and the coping skills and the advice that they so desperately deserve and need. And I really hope that this continues to grow for you guys, and more officers from all these states come together and start a movement, because I think it's so important that we take care of those that take care of us every day. And I can't thank you enough for your sacrifices still to this day, sharing your story, being so vulnerable and authentic and raw and real, and letting your guard down, because it's so important that you share your message with other people out there that really, really are inspired. And I'm so inspired by your story today. So thank you so, so much.
well, thank you. My goal is to get it out there. I will walk the walk if I'm going to talk the talk.
Right.
And, it's easy to get up and say, do this, and do this, but it's not so easy. That's one thing I've discovered about officers. Going through the door when shots are being fired, going and getting in fights, no big deal. Those are all external. The hardest thing in our life is to look inside ourselves and realize there's an issue and then deal with it. And that's what every one of us in life gets to do. And if we all do that, then we're going to have a great outcome and a great life. Whether you're a cop, firefighter, or just a lawyer, citizen, or whatever you do, it does
Right.
not matter. It all
That's
starts.
right.
It all starts with us.
That's right. Glenn, thank you so, so much. God bless you. Be safe out there, and keep spreading your message. I'd love to have you back and
Oh,
and check in on you and see how things are going, and seeing how many other beautiful men and women joined your cause. Guys, thank you so much. Don't forget, I will put everything in the description box. If you want a copy of Glenn's books, they'll be in the description box, along with his link to get in touch with him. If there are any fellow officers, firefighters, military, regular, ordinary day people, Glenn is available to talk to. I'm available to talk to. I love you guys. Thank you so, so much. And I will see you on the next episode. Be well.